Hello, my friend. This is a session 0 recording, if you will, of the beginning of a solo role-playing adventure that I'm going to be embarking on, and hopefully in the course of the coming few minutes, well, I know in the course of the coming few minutes, because I already did it. In the course of the coming few minutes, I will be walking you through the setting of the campaign which I generated using the Ironsworn rulebook, which you can see down below me. We'll be going through that rulebook, referencing it. I'm learning this game at the same time as you are watching me, so we're just going to go right into it, launch right into this thing. To begin, we are playing the Ironsworn game, which is a mechanics system that is designed for solo role-playing adventures, as well as group adventures. And we are just going to jump right into it. You can find the rulebook if you're interested, but otherwise you're just going to be listening along with the story, and hopefully the mechanics stuff will just be kind of in the background, and maybe you'll pick it up as we go. The mechanics to me right now especially are less important than the story and actually engaging with it. So, to begin, the campaign setup summary. Step 1, create your character. Step 2, create your world. 3, create your background bonds. Bonds are relationships between your character, or the main character of the adventure, and either other people or other groups, or perhaps a settlement. Number 4, write your background vow. A vow in this game system in Ironsworn is a quest that the character goes on in order to gain experience and level up. In Ironsworn, you don't actually get experience for killing maybe individual monsters or completing individual tasks, but every time you fulfill a vow that you have made, an iron vow that you swear on a piece of iron so that the old gods can hear you. Whenever you swear one of those vows and then fulfill it, you receive experience points based on how difficult the vow was to accomplish. So, write your background vow. Envision your inciting incident. This is just storytelling stuff now, but what is the inciting event that took your average hero, or my average hero in this case, into the great beyond, into adventure? Set the scene, so that's, same thing. Where is the character? What are they doing? What's happening mechanically in this exact moment that we're watching? Swear an iron vow, so the beginning of the game for all players is they swear an iron vow. That's something that all adventurers have in common in this game, and it's kind of the first, almost like the symbolic first step into adventurerhood, is you've sworn this vow, now you must go out into the world and accomplish it. And then, take step 8 is take next steps. But really, what I did when I was setting this up earlier today was I didn't have, the first step here is create your character, but I didn't really have an idea for my character just to start off. So what I did instead was I created the world first and hoped that the world would give me ideas for a cool character that I wanted to run that almost kind of fit into this world. So what I did, and first what I'll do is I'll explain kind of the Ironsworn, they're called the Ironlands, is the setting of the Ironsworn game, and it's kind of like a Viking, Northern Europe area with monsters and all these sad, hardy people. But anyway, I'll walk you kind of through that, and then I'll explain. There's a process that they give you in the rulebook to kind of customize the world a little bit, and I'll walk you through what I did there, so that really when we get to session 1, it'll feel like we're stepping into into kind of a fleshed out world that has some thoughts and ideas in it. So, going right into it, we have so I created my world first, which requires us to create your world. Going fast. All of this stuff. Okay. Your world. Welcome to the Ironlands. So that is where we start out in this adventure. It's kind of this, as I said, this vast and Nordic land. As you can see in this image here, it is kind of a cold, desolate place. It has these rivers and fjords and dark forests. Actually, it officially kind of looks like this map. In the north, the shattered wastes, which are kind of these frozen tundras. The veiled mountains are kind of like the northernmost mountains of the world, where there are rich mines, but dark winters that come early and force people to flee, like down the slopes and into the other areas, like the Tempest Hills, which is kind of a hilly kind of mountainous flatland, and the hinterlands, which are more wooded hills, as opposed to woods, really, as opposed to like a forest, like the deep wilds, which is the big bad granddaddy of all deep forests. Like deep in that forest is where a lot of the firstborn live, which are like elves and giants and werewolf type creatures that inhabit this land. They're like in the deep wilds, because that's like the deep, dark, scary place. The havens next to it, much less scary, ostensibly, because this is kind of like the nice part of the Ironlands. It's where kind of most of the slightly more successful communities are, because there's some farmland that doesn't just hate the existence of people, but the entire kind of theme of this place is that this is like a hard, harsh place. And so even in the havens, like, crops die, the past couple years have been hard, winter comes and just pummels on these people. The flooded lands south of the havens, of course, it's a lot of marsh, bog, and then the ragged coast is just like, picture Norway, just like fjords and sharp, snowy cliffs and winding rivers, like right onto like a dark beach with this Viking village, and then there's the barrier islands, which is just like the hardest core. It's probably like 6 sheep and like 2 or 3 people on an island, and it's just these scary folk that are just so harshly ground by their environment. Anyway, I digress. So this is the world that we're coming to inhabit, and here was just some more flavor art that I was trying to use to get into the mood before I followed through on the world building steps. But in the book we have, so this is I walked you through this. So in our version of the Ironlands, we are customizing it with our truths. So for each category, we choose one of 3 options and make it true for our version of the Ironlands. And so that's what we're doing. The old world, so the idea is that people in the Ironlands arrived 2 generations ago from the old world, which is, some continent, probably to the south, bigger, much more prosperous, maybe like a nice, happy, relatively happy, like, civilization going on. But something drove them away, and now they're here on, like, the northern wastes of the world, or practically the northern wastes of the world, where dark things are lurking in the forest. So there is the old world, iron. So this is why is it called the Ironlands? Legacies. What kind of creatures lived here before us? Like I mentioned, the things that live in the deep wilds. Communities. What do communities look like here? This is just kind of very, very basic world building, putting together things like the history of the place through the legacies and the iron, and how people got here. Communities, like a very vague political structure. What are communities like? What are the leaders of these communities like? Defense. How are these communities defended? And that's especially important because when you have people defending things, you have armed people, and armed people often means conflict, especially as an adventurer. Maybe you're having conflict with these defenses in some cases, or maybe you are fighting on their side against some sort of monstrous interloper, or maybe you're joining them and fighting against the defenses of another place. And then, moving on from that, there's mysticism. What kind of relationship does the culture of this place and the history of this place have with magic? Religion, a similar vein. Like, what are the belief structures? What do people believe about the universe that they're inhabiting? And not just that, but firstborn beasts and horrors. Like, not only what do these people believe, but like what is actually there? Like, firstborn, like there are, these are things like elves and giants and, deep creatures of the dark woods that don't have names, beasts and, like frickin' manticores and dragons, horrors, wights and liches and undead and ghosts and frightening demons. Makes me fucking want to look over my shoulder. And so these are the decisions that we make when we are customizing our version of the Ironlands. So in our case, we have chosen. This is that was character stuff, but the Ironlands. This is. Oh no, your connection has been interrupted. Hopefully this continues to work. No, not working. Not working! Oh well, I can go back to this book, and we'll actually pull back up our art there. Alright, the truth. This is our truths. So, the old world. The option that we chose of these 1, 2, 3 was the savage clans called the Skuld invaded the kingdoms of the old world. Our armies fell, most were killed or taken into slavery. Those who escaped set sail aboard anything that would float. After an arduous months-long voyage, the survivors made landfall upon the Ironlands. So that's like, how did these people get here 2 generations ago? And the quest starter, you are a descendant of the Skuld. Because of your heritage, your family has long borne the distrust of your fellow Ironlanders. Now, a small force of Skuld have landed on your shores. Are they the harbinger of invasion? Where do your loyalties lie? So that will play into the campaign at some point, because I find that very fascinating as an option. Iron, I just went with something that I thought was cool, not particularly because I know how it will manifest, but or because I knew how it would manifest at the time. But like the option, there's a lot of iron here. Didn't really appeal to me, even though I didn't really understand what this other thing meant. I thought it was cool. That is option 3, which is inscrutable metal pillars are found throughout the land. They are iron gray and smooth as riverstone. No one knows their purpose. Some say they are as old as the world. Some, such as the Iron Priests, worship them and swear vows upon them. Most make the warding sign and hurry along their way when they happen across one. The pillars do not tarnish, and even the sharpest blade cannot mark them. Thought that was pretty cool. Got these like menhir like obelisk things, the frickin' Easter Island heads, dotting the landscape. What does it mean? Is it, there's so much to discover. Legacies. I chose that other humans sailed here from the old world, untold years before, but all that is left of them is a savage, feral people we call the Broken. Is their fate to become our own? I just thought it was a cool idea. The idea of maybe not like savages, but almost like regressed people. So I guess savages, like almost. You take these Ironlanders, these people who are arriving, like people like them arrived, say like 1,000 years ago, and they like got absolutely destroyed by the landscape and just degraded back towards Neanderthalhood. Kind of cool. Could have some interesting elements. They're interacting with them. Very Clan of the Cave Bear, which I like. Reference to whatever that was, like a literature book, I suppose. Communities. I chose we live in communities called circles. These are settlements ranging in size from a steading with a few families to a village of several hundred. Some circles belong to nomadic folk. Some powerful circles might include a cluster of settlements. We trade and sometimes feud with other circles. I just felt like, okay, we do have this primitive kind of environment, but I also wanted to speaking, you really get in the throat. I wanted there to still be opportunity for, meeting more than half a dozen people at a time in a tiny inn or some such. So, when you have these communities of varying sizes, you choose leaders. The leader I chose was numerous clan chiefs rule over petty domains. Most are intent on becoming the one true king. Their squabbles will be our undoing. Because, when you have these cities of varying sizes or circles of varying sizes, you're going to get people rising to the top, and I like the idea of there being some sort of politics going on that my character could maybe interact with. Defense, I chose the wardens are our soldiers, guards, and militia. They serve their communities by standing sentry, patrolling surrounding lands, and organizing defenses in times of crisis. Most have strong ties to their community. Others, called free wardens, are wandering mercenaries who hire on to serve a community or protect caravans. Mercenaries, always a cool way to enter an adventure or to add conflict. Wardens make sense to me. That people living in this kind of dangerous area would organize to defend themselves. Mysticism and religion. So these are the things that people think about the world, the ways that they conceptualize how reality works, right? Some of the coolest stuff, actually. I chose, and I really wanted to flavor it as magic is kind of this innate thing, but it's seen as almost like much more subtle, not like in Harry Potter where you like wave a wand and say a funny word and you shoot like fire out of your wand or whatever, but something more kind of mysterious and maybe a little bit scary. Like maybe you don't know why it works, but you know that when you draw these runes on yourself and you say these words, like shit happens, and that's really cool to me. And because I really like having characters that know some magic. So I wanted to really be able to interact with that, and because I'm running the game, I can interact with it as much as I want. Religion, this was, I chose this option because of one of the quest hooks, which was So the choice that I made was a few Ironlanders still make signs or mumbled prayers out of habit or tradition, but most believe the gods long ago abandoned us. And the quest starter that was suggested for this was a charismatic young Ironlander, encouraging her followers to renounce the vestiges of old world religions, proposes a new path for this new world. What doctrine does she teach? What does she seek to achieve? Are you sworn to aid or to stop her? So I thought that was really interesting, and it kind of tied together a couple things that I was interested in doing. You know, when you have religion, you often interact with the politics, which was something that I was hoping to do. Kind of interact with all these scheming chieftains, and you know, on top of that, there is the other humans. What kind of religion do they have? These the people, what did we call them? The broken. And so I thought this was a very interesting option. And whenever you have somebody powerful and charismatic, there's bound to be drama surrounding them. So thought that was a cool character option. And then the final, the trifecta of the firstborn. I chose. The firstborn have passed into legend. Some say the remnants of the old tribes still dwell in deep forests or high mountains. Most believe they were never anything more than myth. Because I really like the trope of this being kind of human-centric as a campaign or an adventure, but you can encounter these people, and it's like encountering a legend. I really like the idea of like seeing an elf and being like, what the fuck is that thing? Like, I know that from stories. I'm very excited for that experience, to have it through my character. Beasts, generic. I chose beasts stalk the land, or the wild areas of the Ironlands. Like I want a chance to bump into something cool that I could, maybe skin and turn into a jacket. And then horrors, of course, I said, we are wary of dark forests and deep waterways, for monsters lurk in those places in the depths of the long night, when all is wreathed in darkness. Only fools venture beyond their homes. So, just keeping it open, keeping the options open. I don't know how much horror stuff I'm going to be interacting with, but that was kind of the customization aspect of the world that we are playing. And so I have a handy dandy cheat sheet here. So after we created our world and we were given those ideas, or I was fed those ideas, I then took it on myself to create the character to kind of fit that world, who would be an interesting guy. I'm going to be playing a male character. What's going to be an interesting guy to play? How can I almost fit him to the narrative that's already kind of building in my head of maybe this character? I know I want him to be kind of gritty to match this landscape, and I know that I want him to know a little bit of magic, so I can interact with that cool magic system that we have now. And so these things were kind of floating around in my head, and then I went to, in the character, or in the Ironsworn book, there is the chapter on creating your character, which is on page 47, and I totally missed it. Okay, yep. Yeah. There we go. All right. So, character creation summary. Here we go. We got it right here. Step one, of course, is to envision your character. That's kind of what I was just doing. I was trying to come up with, some sort of idea of a guy. I think that when I was envisioning him earlier, this is what I was going to show you. Is I kind of envisioning almost like a rugged, kind of a Viking-looking dude, but a little bit more primal, with like, the shaggy beard and the stuff, but like maybe like more pelts and and leather thongs and stuff. And I really like this art from Far Cry Primal. I think that's what it's called. I've actually not played this game. I've just seen the art of it. But like frickin', here's this dude with a frickin' mammoth and cool spear and this tiger and all that stuff. So I think that's really cool as kind of an aesthetic for a dude. Something that's cool about Ironsworn is you can have animal companions whenever you want. Like you can have them. I may be absolutely destroyed because I don't actually have running water in my apartment right now. So if I keep talking, I may just be coughing my throat out. But what the things we do for the ones we love, in this case. You, yourself, and I. So this was kind of the aesthetic that I was looking at. But over here in the rulebook, number 1, envision your character, which we did. Choose a name. I rolled on a random naming chart for the name. The naming chart in the random charts in Ironsworn are called oracles, which is kind of a cool flavor thing for no particular reason. But I rolled on the Ironlanders names table, and I got 94, so his name was Cato. And this is not working. Alas and alack. Absolutely. Oh no, here, this one's still working, luckily. Okay, so so I named him Cato Aleri, which Aleri being another Ironborn name, and I thought it sounded cool. The next step in the character creation process, which is set your stats. So the stats in Savage Worlds, another game that I'm playing, in Ironsworn are 5 only, and they are Edge, Heart, Iron, Shadow, and Wits. Edge is like agility or dexterity, used for ranged attacks and doing things quickly. Heart is like courage or charisma, measures relationship stuff. Iron is close combat strength. Shadow is like stealth and sneakiness and trickery stuff. And Wits is intelligence and logic and investigative thinking. So you choose the way that you accomplish a task in Ironsworn is you roll 2 d10 dice and then 1 d6 dice. And the d6 dice is the d20 from Dungeons and Dragons and many other role-playing games, where that's the dice that your action hinges on. It's the action dice. So you roll the d6 and then you add appropriate things. So for example, if you roll plus iron, you would, in this case, add 2. Or if you rolled plus shadow, you would add plus 3. So I gave, and then the goal, the 2d10 dice are relevant because you look at them, say for example you roll a 6 and an 8, on the d10s, you then roll your d6 with the goal of beating both one or both of those other d10 dice. So we'll just do an example over here in Roll20 really quick. Roll 2d10, and we got a 10 and a 7. Oof, that's going to be pretty much impossible to beat. And then we roll a d6, and we got a 4. So in this case, we did not beat the 6, even if it was, say, plus shadow, plus 3. It would not have beaten the 7 nor the 10. So that would be what is called a miss. This is actually from a system called Power of the Apocalypse, or something like that, Powered by the Apocalypse, which is a gaming system that utilizes this mechanic, dice mechanic. But the goal is so you get a miss if you do not beat either of the, and you have to be higher than it. So it would have to be 8, 9, or 10 to beat the 7. And, I mean, nothing to beat the 10, you're kind of screwed. But if you beat one of them, it's called a weak hit. So if it had been an 8, for example, the total score of the action dice, we would have gotten a weak hit. And say it had been 7 and 9, and we had gotten a 10, then 10 is higher than both 9 and 7, so that's called a strong hit. The importance of getting a weak hit or getting a strong hit is relevant later when you're doing, when you're actually trying to do things in the real world as the character, and you need to know how well you succeeded or whether you failed or things of that nature in order to keep the narrative flowing. So, snow ghosts. So, this is how I set my stats. Actually, was what I was showing you. I kind of wanted a character that was kind of sneaky, kind of in the background, kind of like assassiny a little bit. So I put shadow first, sneaky shadow shenanigans, and then iron, getting close, like close combat. And wits, somebody who's like kind of clever. They can think through things. Wits are often helpful with magic as well. So there are ways to use magic that require high wits. Heart and edge. So not great at ranged combat, not very fast. Heart, not very brave, I guess. Not very good at bonding with people. This could be a cool guy to play just by looking at his stats. Cato Aleri has he's kind of sneaky, kind of good up close. He's almost like a rogue, I'm imagining, with like some freaking shaggy wolf pelts on him. So next, after we assign our stats, we set our health, spirit, and supply scores to +5. So health is hit points. All adventurers start with +5 hit points. Spirit is kind of your emotional hit points. It's actually very interesting. There are 2 ways to take damage in Ironsworn. One of them is health damage, so getting stabbed, and there's also spirit damage, like emotional damage, mental damage, trauma that you experience. You can take spirit damage from something like a ghost or a wight or something that's very fucking freaky and scary. If I can keep on checking over my shoulder, fucking superstitious Jack. But, so you can take emotional damage down to the point where you have 0, and then your mind can break, which I think is very cool. It really fits with the bitter harshness of the Ironsworn Ironlands aesthetic that they're building. And then supply is a very generic and fast-paced way of taking care of basic equipment. So in Ironsworn, you don't need to buy, days rations and rope and a climbing kit and an adventurer's pack and a flint and steel and torches and candles and, this, that, and the other thing. You have supply, and supply is depleted at times by things like traveling on a journey, or maybe you're crossing a river and you lose some of it because you rolled poorly. Things like that can cause you to lose supply, and then when you lose supply, there are other detriments, other punishments that occur as well, similar to getting stabbed or being scared half to death. So we set those all to 5, and then we set our momentum counter to +2 with a max of 10, so a max of +10, and a base point of +2. So momentum is another interesting factor in Ironsworn. it represents how well things are going for you. How well are you kind of almost in flow of achievement after achievement after achievement. It's actually very much like real life, right? In that way of, when things are going good, you feel like you're on a roll. Things often keep going well for you. Whereas the reverse, when you lose momentum, harder to keep going. So momentum in this game allows you to basically push yourself over the edge after you have made a roll and you are unhappy with the outcome. So imagine that the challenge dice, the D10s, are a 4, a 4 and a 6. If you have, and you roll a 3, so you're gonna get a miss. You're not gonna beat the 4 with your 3, and you're not gonna beat the 6 with your 3. You can use the momentum tracker to cancel out any challenge dice that is lower than it. So it just doesn't exist. So if you have, say, +5 momentum, you can burn your momentum, that's what it's called, you can burn your momentum to delete the 4, and thus you will get a weak hit instead of a miss, which can be vital, and you can just push yourself over the edge in some cases. But when you burn your momentum, you go back to your rest point. So in this case, it's 2. Sometimes it will be 0 or +1, or in the negatives if you keep getting, whatever debuffs to your momentum. But not important right now. All we needed to do was set it. That was done. And then after this, we get back into the story side of things. So the first thing that we did was mark up to 3 background bonds. And I didn't actually do this next. What I did was I skipped to step number 7, which is choose 3 assets. So in Ironsworn, assets are essentially what makes your character unique. I'm going to go back to this page. Okay. 3 assets. Assets are what make your character unique. So here is Cato Aleri, and from this list of just all these assets, assets come in 4 types. You have companions, which are companion animals. You have paths, which are like classes, blade-bound, alchemist, herbalist, archer, stuff like that. Path, combat talent. Actually, combat talent is kind of like class. Combat talent, basically stuff to do with fighting better, and rituals, which is magic. I think it's a cool name for magic, a ritual. It really gives it the almost like the ritualistic nature of doing something and maybe not even knowing why it works, but trusting that it does work. So for Cato, I selected Raven, which is an animal familiar in the shape of a raven. And I'm just going to keep on zooming in on your boy. So, Raven, I named it Barda, which is a reference to the children's book series Del Tora Quest. But a raven named Barda, because I liked the idea of him having this, him being kind of this shady, assassin-y figure who has this raven who hangs out with him and helps him. So with this raven, I had one of 3 options. So when you have assets, sometimes they will start with them with a bullet point filled in, as this ritual magic spell one did. But other times you get to choose the one that you start with. So in this case, I chose Salai. When you secure an advantage, which is a move in the Ironsworn game, when you secure an advantage or face danger plus shadow, using your raven to perform trickery. such as creating or distraction or stealing a small object, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. So basically whenever I use Barda, or whenever Kato uses Barda to distract the enemy in order to do something plus Shadow, which is something sneaky, he gets +1 to the roll, and he can also get +1 momentum if he succeeds. And then the second asset that I chose, you start with 3 assets, and you can get more. That's what you spend experience on. So when you get experience points, you can then expend those experience points to either buy a new asset for yourself and then get up to 4 and 5 and 6 assets, or you can improve an asset that you already have. And buying an asset costs 3 experience points. We keep track of our experience points up here. Right now we have 0 experience points. You can buy a new asset for 3 experience points, or improve an asset. And when you improve an asset, you just fill in another one of these circles for 2 experience points. So the next asset that Kato possesses is Shadow Walk. When you cloak yourself with the gossamer veil of the Shadow Realms, roll plus Shadow. On a strong hit, which is when you beat both of the challenge dice, take +1 momentum, then re-roll any dice 1 time only when you make a move by ambushing, hiding, or sneaking. On a weak hit, as above, but the shadows try to lead you astray. You must first face danger to find your way. So I like the idea of, he's this sneaky guy. He can even walk through shadows in a semi-magical way, but those shadows are fucking calling to him. Those shadows are like the darkness wants him, and I like that as a kind of an edginess to our character. And then Path, kind of what is his class-ish. Infiltrator. When you make a move to breach, traverse, or hide within an area held by an enemy, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. So this I took because I knew that I was going to be spending a lot of time kind of sneaking around enemy areas. That kind of fit with the roguish, assassin-y idea, and also the idea that I'm going to be adventuring probably by myself, which means I'm probably going to be sneaking more often than I am going to be trying to just kick the front door down and dash in like a goddamn barbarian, just great axe swinging wildly. So those were the assets that I chose, and those are what assets are. And after those assets, I went back and I was like, okay, I now have a better idea of what kind of character I am. I'm kind of this shadowy rogue guy that we talked about, and I have this raven, this dark raven. One of the other rituals, one of the other spells that I'm thinking of getting later on is one where you actually can summon a flock of ravens to bring you an omen or words from the gods, which I think is very a cool kind of raven assassin wizard spice, spicy, and I like that. So that is kind of the character that we have now in Kato, and I thought, what are some cool relationships for Kato to have? And right immediately what jumped out at me was the thing that we had earlier from the religion page in here, which was the quest starter under a few Ironlanders. There's still some religion, but really it's just a habit at this point, and they believe the gods have given up on them. And the quest starter beneath it is a charismatic Ironlander, encouraging her followers to renounce the vestiges of old world religions, proposes a new path for this new world. What doctrine does she teach? What does she seek to achieve? Are you sworn to aid or to stop her? And I'm thinking, what if I already know this person? What if I have a bond to this person? I'm like, okay, it's a girl, it's a woman. Well, there are a couple relationships that I could have to her. She could be my mother, maybe, or she could be my grandmother, or she could be a woman that I am in love with, or a woman that I have known all of her life. And then I was thinking about it, what would be really cool is if she's my sister. So I really like the idea of like this kind of charismatic, like light side force for this religious purpose. And like beside her, like sworn to her aid, is her brother, who is like kind of this darker half, kind of like a little bit of dark magic, summons like ravens to read the signs while she's like, preaching this whatever her religion is, which we haven't decided yet, which is still cool. I have some ideas, but it just kind of bounces around in the head. Anyway, that's the first bond that I came up with, which you can see now over here. Bonds. Mila Aleri, I rolled for her name, Mila, and that's my sister, a charismatic religious leader in the Veiled Mountains, which I rolled for as the place that we are from. And then another bond that I thought would be useful would be maybe the community that we're in. And so when I tried to figure out what the community was that we were in, I rolled the Veiled Mountains, which are this place up here, which as I mentioned, got like mines and very, high frozen peaks all winter and glaciers and this ferocious, ever-encroaching winter. So we're living up here and in a place that we, ironically, through the random dice generator, accidentally named Ravencliff. So Ravencliff is the settlement in the Veiled Mountains where I decided that Mila and Kato were probably from, and I thought it would also be a kind of a cool flavor. This was like the first place that Mila had converted to her new faith. So this is a settlement where maybe she is known and our family is known, but I also liked the idea of her and us being kind of on our own. So maybe something happened to our parents. And we have another grown ally who is perhaps named Padma. And using a combination of, the random oracle tables, I came to, I think that the exact words were active mystic. So an active user of the old magics was what I interpreted that as. So when you roll on the random tables, what happens is it gives you multiple kind of words and adjectives and just kind of throws them at you, and you're expected to interpret them using the power of your brain to take the logic of the story in that exact moment and context and take those inputs and transform it into something. So I heard active mystic, and I thought, Padma, the mystic who raised Mila and me after our parents disappeared. And I thought, where did our parents disappear to? Well, I rolled on one of the dice, and I got move plus knowledge. So I thought, they're trying to the parents of Kato were trying to acquire, maybe move knowledge that they weren't supposed to. Maybe they were researching, and they were trying to extract knowledge out and then spread it among the people, or they were trying to do their own secret research up here in the Veiled Mountains. And so I thought it would be cool if there were some place that was nearby, maybe a ruins slightly down the mountain that was near the village of Ravencliff, or the settlement of Ravencliff, and that was where our parents had disappeared. But we were never old enough and strong enough to go after them, and people are kind of scared of that place. So even though we knew that they'd gone in there and they hadn't come back out, there was no finding out what happened to them. Where the people aren't going in there. There's whatever dark things in the deep below. So those are the bonds, and then the mark. And then the last thing was set a background vow. And so the background vow, you have your background bonds, you have your background blah, blah, blah. Your background vow is like the vow that is most, maybe even central to the narrative or to your character. It's meant to be this like epic quest that may even take, years or decades to accomplish. And the point of it often maybe isn't even to accomplish it, but so that you have this kind of unfolding narrative of through the adventurer's life. This is kind of a storytelling thing again. Through the adventurer's life, there is a driving purpose, right? And that's something that makes characters interesting, is if even if they're doing other things over here, there's this driving purpose that's keeping them going in this direction. And this is true of characters and also of real life people. But having this long-term vow and goal is something that is going to be a driver of cool narrative moments. So I thought about it for a moment, and I'm like, okay, so what are some obvious goals for this character to have? We can insert the word vow and goal pretty much interchangeably in this case. I thought, well, okay, some obvious ones are like find out what happened to mom and dad. But I really like the idea of him having this strong relationship with his charismatic, maybe younger sister. And so I thought, what a cool vow would be that might even take decades to accomplish, if ever, was I will bring Mila's faith to all of the Ironlands. And I set the difficulty of this vow as epic, which is the most difficult type of challenge, and I'll explain how challenges work when we encounter them more. But essentially, the most difficult form of challenge, and that's kind of be the kind of the thing that almost like shapes this guy's life in many respects. Is I'm going to save. I'm going to help my sister to save the Ironlands by bringing her religion to it, which is going to be a cool way for me to like interact with the religion and the politics of the place and the history of it maybe and all of those things that I was really getting stoked about earlier. So on top of that, there's also the inciting event to okay. That's creating the character step. That's the step creating the character of the campaign setup that we had up on the Kindle book earlier. Here we go. Boom. So create your character, create the world. We've done that now. Create your background bonds. Oh, already did it. Step 3. Step 4, write your background vow. Boom, already did it. 5, envision your inciting incident, set the scene. Okay, so that's actually something that I'm going to do in the next video, is I'm going to give you the inciting incident and set the scene. We're going to do it together. And then I'm going to swear an iron vow and take my next steps forward. I hope that you enjoyed this session 0 here with me as we kind of got moving with the Iron Worlds, figured out some of the rules together, and really got everything into place so that in the next video when I start launching into the storytelling and you get to experience it with me, we'll really have our feet on a solid foundation of everybody understanding, coming from the same place, and you're going to be experiencing it just as I am. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Like and subscribe. Boom. Ba-da-doom. Ba-doom.